we've been talking about the design of satin sleeves in knitting. Last time we made some measurements, and today we put those measurements to use to actually design the pattern. To shape the armhole, you'll need your gauge, and then two of the measurements that we made, the shoulder width and the bust measurement. And the first step is to determine how many stitches to decrease overall. So to do that, we need to determine how many stitches we have at the bust line, and then right under the arms, and then how many stitches we end up when we get to the shoulders. So for that, we need to use proportionalities and the gauge. So as an illustration, let's say my gauge is 21 stitches and 25 rows for a 10 by 10 centimeter swatch. I like to use centimeters. That's 4 inches by 4 inches. And then I find that my shoulder width measurement is 32 centimeters and that my bust is 80 centimeters, which is going to be 40, because you measure your bust all the way around, but you should take only half of that. So then I need to transfer this 32 centimeters for the shoulders and this 40 centimeter for the bust into a number of stitches. So this is where proportionalities come in, and there's a really easy formula, and this is the hardest math on here. So you take your actual measurement, you multiply by the gauge and divide by, in my case, 10 centimeters, because my swatch is 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. So let's work out how many stitches I will have by the time I get to under the armhole, the bust measurement. So that's a 40 centimeter. The gauge is 21 stitches to 10 centimeters. So we find that that's going to be 4 times 21. And if you have any kind of instinct, maybe you could guess that. 4 times 21. So I need 84 stitches at the bust. At the shoulders, it's going to be 32 times 21 divided by 10. That's a 67.2. Let's take a even number, round it up. So we're going to say 68 stitches for the shoulder. It's always good to work in even numbers in knitting because you get two sides. We divide, in the end, we'll have to divide everything by 2. So good to have even numbers. All right, so how many stitches to decrease overall? Well, we need to go from 84 down to 68, and that is 16. But that's the whole thing. So if I schematically draw my garment with more curves than it would have. So bust, shoulder, and that's 16, but the 16 needs to happen split, 8 on one side, 8 on the other, because we're going to focus on just one side. So this means 8 that we need to decrease. So now the name of the game is to go from the 84 to 72 with a nice little curve. We need to have this nice little curve. So this is where the first website that I linked below the video comes in handy, because she gives us a method, and she says essentially divide that by 3. So we want to divide 8 by 3, and I know that does not divide quite nicely. So 9 9 would divide to 3, 3, 3. 8 doesn't. 8 divides to 3, 3, 2. So she says, take your highest number, which is 3, and put that as the first decrease. So if I schematically look at the left armhole, I'm going to have one set of decreases, and then I'm going to do another one, and then I'm going to do another one. And you see that the slope, like this we're going to bind off all at once flat, and then we have a small slope, and then we have a bigger slope. So that's the idea. So here's what we're going to do. Those 3 all at once. These 3 every fourth. These 2 every other. So if you're a knitter, you know that you always want to work your decreases on a right side. These will happen every other right side row, and these will happen every right side row. And that's how you round the band. After that, nothing else is happening on the armhole side. You got down to the 68 stitches, and you're going to work just straight up until it's time to bind off for the shoulders. We now turn to the sleeve. As I've mentioned, the sleeve has 2 parts. One that is pretty easy to do, the arm, and then one that's going to take more work, the sleeve cap. So for the, I'm going to focus for now on just the arm part. And for that one, what we'll need in terms of measurement is what we measured at the base of the sleeve. You went all around. Also, you measured the widest part of your arm. I didn't say it like that, but yeah, basically you want the widest part of the arm, and normally that will land close to under the arm. And then you also want to have, at this point, the length of the sleeve. So if I take an example for me, I was making short sleeves, but the measurement above the elbow of 20 centimeters, the measurement at the widest part of the arm of 26 centimeters, and then a 14 centimeter length, sleeve length. Then we also need our gauge, and my gauge was 21 stitches and 25 rows for a 10 by 10 centimeter square. And from there, it's pretty easy. You use proportionalities yet again to figure out how many stitches to cast on and how many stitches we need at the end. So the 20 centimeter divided by, I did not present it this way. It was the actual measurements times the gauge. So it's 21 stitches divided by the size of the square, 10 centimeters. So without doing much math, I know that I need to cast on 42 stitches when I start my sleeve. And then I know that by the time I get to the top of the sleeve, I'll need 26 centimeters. And that comes out to be 55 stitches, rounding up to an even number, 56 stitches. And then the last thing I need is to know how many rows is this to happen over that 14 centimeters. How many rows does that translate to? So same deal, I do 14 centimeters, and this time I take my row gauge, 25 rows, divide by the size of the square. And that comes out to be exactly 35. So let's see. We'll work with that. So what I need to do next is to figure out how many stitches do I need to increase overall. Well, that is, we want to go from 42 to 56 to 14. 14 stitches need to be increased, but that's for both sides. So if I focus just on one side, that's going to be 7 7 stitches on each side over 35 rows. Okay, I'm lucky here because 35 is an exact multiple of 7. But if it's not that easy, you would need to do your number of rows divided by the number of stitches you need to increase, and you round that number. Now, if I get an odd number, when you knit, you always want to do your increases on right side rows. So I can't do every 5 rows because it'll be right side, wrong side, right side, wrong side. So what you see commonly done in patterns is they break it down and they will do 5 and 6. So this will be every 4 and 6 alternatively. That's how you deal with odd numbers in knitting. So that was easy. The next thing is the sleeve cap. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like.